The second reason for adopting a vegan diet is for the environment. And in fact, the best thing any of us can do for the environment is to adopt a vegan diet. It just makes intuitive sense. You feed an animal. The vast majority of the calories that the animal consumes go into just leading the animal's life, just like a human being. A 200-pound man is going to burn like 2,000 calories just leading his life, even if he never gets out of bed. The same thing is true for a cow or a chicken or any animal. The vast majority of the food that you feed to them is going to be burned off just leading their lives, and only a fraction of it is going to be turned into milk or eggs or flesh. It's bizarre, really. You take a crop like soy, oats, corn, or wheat, but devoid of cholesterol and artery-clogging saturated fat. These are products high in fiber and high in complex carbohydrates. You put them into an animal, and you create something with no fiber, no complex carbohydrates at all, and with lots of cholesterol and saturated fat. It makes about as much sense to take pure water, run it through a sewer system, and then drink it. The respected environmental magazine E noted in 2002 that more than 1/3 of all fossil fuels produced in the United States, more than 1/3 are used to raise animals for food. This really seems like a conservative figure. If we have to grow massive amounts of grain and soy, with all the tilling, irrigation, crop dusters, and so on that requires, we have to truck all that grain and soy to factory-style farms and feedlots. We have to feed it to the approximately 10 billion land animals who are raised for food in the United States each year. We truck those animals to automated slaughter facilities. We truck the dead animals to processing centers. We run the processing and packaging machines. And then we truck the packaged meat to grocery stores. Well, there's a lot of energy being used at every single stage. Now, if all this energy is being used, all these fossil fuels are being burned, and all this manure is being produced. So we're talking about some serious air pollution. Many environmentalists, they'll sooner walk or ride their bike than drive in order to decrease their air pollution. And then they'll happily eat some dairy, meat, or egg product without a second thought about the fact that they're paying for gas-guzzling animal transport trucks, refrigerated meat trucks, pollution-churning processing plants, and so on. A close friend of mine says that where the environment is concerned, eating meat is like driving a huge SUV or an 18-wheeler. Eating a vegetarian diet is like driving a Cadillac. And eating a vegan diet, that's like riding a bike or walking. And a similar analysis holds for land. According to author John Robbins, the average vegan uses about 1/6 of an acre of land to satisfy his or her food requirements for a year. The average vegetarian who consumes dairy and eggs requires about 3 times that. And the average meat eater requires almost 20 times that much land. Basically, we can grow a lot more food on an equal amount of land if we're not funneling the crops through animals. Also, the use of herbicides and pesticides and the monocropping of feed crops like corn, soy, wheat, and oats are destroying vital topsoil. Howard Lyman, a 4th-generation cattle rancher who's become a vegan advocate, he talks about how he became a farmer because of his love for the life-filled soil. Now, he says, the soil's become a lifeless dirt, in large part because it's been ruined by raising animals for food. And let's think about water. According to the National Audubon Society, raising animals for food requires about as much water as all other water uses combined, even as many areas are experiencing drought conditions. It takes about 300 gallons of water to feed a vegan for a day. It requires about 4 times as much to feed a vegetarian, and it requires more than 14 times as much to feed a meat eater. Of course, if you have to feed animals, you have to irrigate the crops you're feeding them, you have to give them water. The systems that keep animals today use water to hose down both the factory farm and the slaughterhouse. It's a water-intensive operation. And raising animals for food is also a water-polluting process. One dairy cow produces more than 100 pounds of excrement a day. All farmed animals raised in the United States produce 130 times the excrement of the entire human population of this country. Their excrement is more concentrated than human excrement, and it's often contaminated with herbicides, pesticides, toxic chemicals, hormones, antibiotics, and so on. These massive farmed animal factories, they don't have waste treatment plants, so this sludge goes in vast quantities onto, and it destroys our topsoil. Or it goes into and pollutes our water, often causing ecological imbalances and killing fish and other aquatic life. Clearly, all of these statistics are going to be approximations, Some of them will change based on the time of year and the area crops are being grown in. What doesn't change is that animals will not grow, they will not produce milk or eggs without food and water, and they won't do it without producing excrement. Thus, eating meat, dairy products, and eggs, it's always going to be vastly more resource intensive and vastly more polluting than using the land to grow food for human beings. Of course, anyone who reads the papers knows what factory fishing trawlers are doing to our sea and ocean bottoms. One super trawler is the length of a football field and takes in 800,000 pounds of fish in a single netting. Trawlers scrape up ocean bottoms, destroying coral reefs and everything else in their way. Hydraulic dredges scoop up huge chunks of the ocean floor to sift out scallops, clams, and oysters. Most of what the fishing fleets get isn't even eaten by human beings. Half is fed to animals who are raised for food, and about 30 million tons each year are just tossed back into the ocean, dead, and this greatly disturbs the natural biological balance. Commercial fishing fleets are destroying sensitive aquatic ecosystems at a rate that is really beyond comprehension. And then there's aquaculture, which is increasing at a rate of more than 10% annually. Aquaculture is even worse than commercial fishing, because for starters, it takes about 4 pounds of wild-caught fish to reap just 1 pound of farmed fish. Farmed fish eat fish who are caught by commercial trawlers, but who aren't used for human consumption. Farmed fish are often raised in the same water that wild fish swim in, but fish farmers dump antibiotics into the water and use genetic breeding to create these Frankenstein fish. The antibiotics contaminate the oceans and seas, and the genetic freak fish sometimes escape and breed with the wild fish, throwing delicate aquatic balances out of kilter. Researchers at the University of Stockholm have demonstrated that the horrible environmental influence of fish farms can extend to an area 50,000 times larger than the farm itself. So the choice is clear. We can show our environmental values every time we sit down to eat by adopting a vegan diet, or we can stomp over the earth in combat boots by eating meat, dairy, and eggs. Really, a true environmentalist cannot eat meat, dairy, or eggs.